I'm going to talk a little bit about the measure and get to the specifics of it, which are really important for us to understand. And we're going to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. I think we're going to have pencils and cards around for people, and also for the Zoom people, we'll have a chat where you can pose your questions in chat, and they will be passed up to Lira and myself. I want to echo what Lira said just now, and say from my heart, it's about community, and the campaign has been about community the entire time, about creating the community that we envision Santa Cruz to be. And I think that's so important, and it really hit home to me today. My daughter was at Santa Cruz High School during the hoax active shooter thing, and it just punched me in the gut. It really did. And it's just, we can't have that kind of community. That's not community. That's the very opposite. That's nagging and pulling away at community. And I really believe in my heart that Measure O is community, and that's the overarching principle. So I want to be real clear about what Measure O is about in its details, and I want to ask you to engage any way you want with a wider audience and help us bring people together around voting yes on Measure O. Opponents say, oh, it's so complicated, or oh, it's so vague. It is neither complicated nor vague. It is 4 basic points. First, renovate our downtown library where it is. Second, secure permanence for the farmers market where it is and where it thrives on Lot 4. Third, dedicate 8 city-owned parking lots to the development of 100% affordable housing. And fourth, avoid building a massive and unneeded concrete parking structure on Lot 4. Those are the 4 basic points. If you vote yes on Measure O, that's what you're voting for. Renovating the library, farmers market where it is, development of affordable housing on city-owned property, and not having an unnecessary parking structure that covers Lot 4 where the farmers market presently is. If I'm very lucky, I'll be able to get my computer to actually get to the next slide. We voted for Measure S in 2016. I know I did, and I went back and looked at the campaign, what the newspapers were reporting, what the editorials were saying, what the acting director of the library system was saying. They were saying, we need badly to, what? Renovate the library where it is. And I voted for it. If anybody had told me I was voting to spend the money to obliterate Lot 4 and its thriving farmers market, I wouldn't have been there voting for it. So that's something to start out with. And that, I don't want to bring out the architecture critic in me, but this is not a good design. It's not a good thing to plop in the middle of Santa Cruz. You can go back and see Russ Boucher's wonderful model at the back in order to understand that. Their proposal currently is, and I'm going to get through this a little bit just because we need to know what the alternative is. Their proposal is to build an unnecessary parking garage. They vacillate as to whether it's going to be 1 level underground or just three levels above ground of concrete, and then build 5 stories of affordable housing above that and slap the library on the western side of it. That is what they're proposing. It would cover, basically sidewalk to sidewalk of Lot 4. Now, the first thing to understand about that is that we don't need a parking structure. We don't need it. We have sufficient parking. we are able, consultants tell the city, and they don't like to listen to it, that we can manage parking demand in a way that means that we don't need to create 20, 25 tons of concrete and its embodied carbon. So, you know, this is not the way to build community. As Patrick Seaman says, we have a parking management problem, not a parking supply problem. Or as a 2019 parking study said, modernize parking management, better align parking prices to the cost of building and maintaining the system. Now, is there really increasing demand for parking? Well, it turns out, no, there is not. If you look at this graph, you can see the green line above is the total spaces available. They have marginally increased between 2004 and 2018. And then what happened on the demand side? Well, demand was going up and up and up, but kind of leveling off by 2008, and then the Great Recession hit, and wham, demand dropped incredibly. And you know, the thing that happened after that is that with the internet, with people basically doing their shopping more and more online rather than in bricks and mortar places, parking demand never recovered from that, and it has yet to recover. We don't even have, except for the very beginning, I think, no, we don't even have any of the pandemic in this parking demand curve. The parking system is currently running a deficit. It may be climbing slowly out of that deficit, but not enough to pay for the kind of debt that would be incurred by building a parking lot. Okay, what we propose, and this is something that urban planners around the country recognize as a good thing. In an affordable housing crisis, we need to bring resources to the table that can be used to build affordable housing. And what resources does the city have? Well, it turns out the city owns land. It owns parking lots. And cities around the country have been using city-owned parking lots to do what? Build affordable housing. That's what we propose. We propose keeping Lot 4 for the farmer's market and designating 8 other city-owned lots for affordable housing exclusively, 100% affordable housing above the ground level. Now, conservatively, according to our estimates, we've run the numbers, this will yield somewhere between 305 and 433 units of affordable housing. That is far, far more than what the city is proposing to build on Lot 4. And guess what? You don't have to cut down the trees, you don't have to build a parking garage, and so on. If I had today's Sentinel, I would wave it around and say, look, the housing development requirements for the county of Santa Cruz and for the city for the next period, we are allocated, we have to build so and so much housing according to regional standards, are going way up, you know, like hundreds and hundreds, thousands of units. And we're not going to get there with the city having a plan for, oh, let's have these wonderful 124 units of affordable housing. We need to do something much more significant, and that's what this measure proposes to do. And the other thing that we need to say, you'll hear people moaning. Don Lane, I like Don Lane a lot, but I'd love to hear him moan. And he moans, he says, you're stopping a perfectly good project, you're killing it. Well, as a matter of fact, we're not. As a matter of fact, if you remember back to the earlier slide, you can't build the affordable housing unless you have what built underneath it? Parking garage. You can't build the parking garage unless you have $1.9 million a year in revenue from the parking district to fund the darn thing. Guess what the parking district doesn't have? It doesn't have $1.9 million per year to fund a parking garage. And it's unlikely to have that in the foreseeable future. 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4 years, who knows? We really need to reinvent the downtown if there's going to be a demand for parking. We have empty storefronts now. We need a greater vision than what the city is offering. The other side of it is the library. Well, it'd be great if we had $42 million to put into a library someplace. I would like to put it into renovating the library where it is. We don't have $42 million. The money left, they gave away $1.5 million to finish Branciforte and Garfield branch libraries, and that dropped the amount of money left for the downtown library from $27 million to $25.5 million. And now they're saying, oh, well, let's spend an extra $17 million to put this library on lot 4, cut down the trees, move the farmer's market someplace else. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I get worked up. What we can do is build affordable housing on these other city lots. Even Don Lane, and I don't often quote Don Lane, but he said at the Paradox Hotel Forum on Measure O, where Lira Filippini spoke, and he both spoke, he said, well, actually, it's not a bird in the hand. What? Every time I turn up some no on O literature, it's saying, it's a bird in the hand. They're trying to kill it. Don says, well, no, it's not a bird in the hand. Okay? And it's not, because of the parking garage, because of the library funding, and so forth. We have had a study done by architecture people at the University of San Francisco in Jeff Oberdorfer's studio, who've demonstrated the potential for building really nice affordable housing with community rooms. You can have a child care center there if you want, whatever you want, parking on the ground level, and we can do this. This is what other cities have done. So we have proof of concept with building affordable housing on city-owned lots. All right, let's just look at it then, take a step back. The city's proposed project is for 123 affordable units plus a management unit. We would be using city-owned lots downtown, earmarked 100% affordable housing, and producing at least 2.5 times that much and maybe 3 times that much housing. The costs, we don't know the exact cost of either project. They certainly haven't actually had some engineering firm come in and cost out their proposal, but the price keeps going up. At one point it was...
Right now it's $128 million for just the housing part, for
$128 million. It used to be, I can remember, I think it was only 6 months ago, it was $52 million. So it's sort of double. I mean, this is real inflation we're talking about, folks. And then the other thing about it is, if we don't need the parking, we can use the kind of money that we would be spending on parking, we can use it actually for affordable housing. Okay, what about the farmer's market? Well, you know, you keep hearing, oh, well, the farmer's market doesn't ever say they want to stay where they are. Well, you know, your landlord comes to you and says your lease is ending. You could say, well, I'd like to stay where I am. And they say, your lease is ending. Facing up to that, the farmer's market negotiated a memorandum of understanding. It was published, 2 weeks ago, I think. Guess what the memorandum of understanding doesn't say? It doesn't say we really want to leave lot 4. That's not what the farmer's market people say. They say we are studying a variety of options, including, guess what, remaining on lot 4. Well, the other thing that we'd like to see remain on lot 4 is the 9 heritage trees, including this one, which needs some help and some support, but it can be stabilized, and the rest of them can even get to even stronger help. It was about a week ago that these trees got posted with a tentative permit for removing them. not just moving them someplace else, but cutting them down to make way for the Lot 4 8-story project. But guess what? The farmers market thrives there, and to quote the city, open spaces should have value and meaning. They should be carefully located where people want to be and in locations that take advantage of the unique resources, heritage, and traditions of the community. Urban planners will tell you exactly the same thing around the country. They will say, build on what works. Don't just assume that you can destroy a place that works and replant it someplace else. You can't transplant the heart and say, gee, I'd really like the heart to be on my thigh. It just doesn't work like that, folks. Lot 4 is large, it's central, it's sunny, it's a great place for the farmers market. The funds that the city has committed for the farmers market can be used on Lot 4 or wherever the farmers market decides it wants to be located. And there is parking around it, and the way that we develop the parking around it, there will be parking remaining. There will also, we hope in the long run, be a plaza commons kind of thing there. I've been so amazed. I looked at something at Rogers, Arkansas. Been to Arkansas? Anybody been to Arkansas? Yeah. Okay, good. I have too. Fayetteville. Down the road from Fayetteville, if you'll pardon my pronunciation, but that's the correct Arkansas. Fayetteville. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, I appreciate that. Is Rogers. And Rogers has built a wonderful downtown plaza with a playground. I'd be glad to send you the link to it if you email ourfuture@gmail.com. It's really a moving story to see what a community about our size can do if they say, let's have a really creative way to have public space. The city has proposed any number of schemes, and I'm not going to go into them, but one of their schemes is to say, oh, well, let's just move the farmers market over to Lot 7 on Front Street, across from those boutique hotel and the market rate that is unaffordable housing that's going up along the river, which you can see in Russ's model, both on the screen and at the back of the room. It has 3 times the traffic that you see on Lot 4. It will be in a canyon surrounded by large developments, and the housing there already has a park nearby. All right, well, what about the library renovation? One of the things that's really great about the library is it's been there since the Carnegie Library was built there in 1907. It was that beautiful building, I was not here, got destroyed when they decided to build the present library. That was a mistake, but it is part of the Civic Center, and libraries are at the heart of democracy. It is open in the renovation that is planned, for which there are already architectural drawings and specifications. There is a change in the orientation to it so that it will face toward City Hall, and the other side of it will face for disabled access into the parking lot. And it will have completely redone HVAC, electrical, plumbing, roof, all the other things. It will remediate any problems there are with asbestos that's presently in the building. It will solve problems and create a wonderful 21st century space. All functions maintained. It's a right-sized library. It's not your McDonald's, what is it, McDonald's oversized? Is this what that is? Supersized. Oversized. I think, it's a Big Mac oversized. It is a right-sized library for our community. If we ever reach the point where we decide, oh, we should expand the library, we can build an annex that goes directly to the east of the existing library for more library space. That is part of the Measure O proposal, is that possibility. And yes, you do have to close the library for a year or maybe at the most 2 years. We have a lot of storefronts downtown where we can do that. We managed to survive the pandemic with the library more or less completely closed, which I certainly wouldn't want to see. But I think that making it work for the whole community, taking that 2 years to make a long-term decision for the future of the community is crucial. And here's just a circulation diagram of it. You can see to the left opening out to City Hall, to the right opening out to the parking lot. The green spaces on the right-hand side are a community plaza that's outside the community room, something not possible in the Lot 4 library, and a children's outdoor space that's right next to the children's library. So this is a very thoughtful design that is something that will provide us with a real asset to the community and a central part of the Civic Center. So just to point out, we have a lot of endorsements from environmental groups. And it's not just because of the trees, it's because we want to have affordable housing near people, where people work, so that people can reduce their trip to work. We want the equity, the social equity of having public space that is available to people who increasingly need it, and people will increasingly need public space as downtown densifies. We want a community gathering space where all parts of the community can come together. And anytime you go down to the farmer's market on a Wednesday, you can sense that feeling that, gee, we're all here. All kinds of different people are here and we're together. And that is so important. All right, so just to sum up, we want to deprioritize an unneeded parking structure. We want to prioritize mature trees and an urban forest. We want to reduce embodied carbon. I'll get to that in a minute. And we want people-centered urban planning. And we want a holistic solution. Now, when we say embodied carbon, what is embodied carbon? I don't want to get into the details here too much, but it costs, in terms of CO2 production, making cement is a very intensive anti-environmental process. It spews tons and tons of carbon into the air. When you build a new building, you can say, oh, well, we've got a green roof. How long does it take you to have a benefit of that green roof or solar energy and so forth that will cover the embodied carbon that you've produced by building the 3 or 4 story parking garage? Years, which is why architects, the Pritzker Prize winner in, I think it was 2021, said, always renovate, don't build new. If you can renovate a structure, go ahead and renovate the structure. And you can see here, I'm not going to go through this, but there's an awful lot of carbon being produced by having large, heavy buildings on the left compared to renovation on the right-hand side of your screen. All right, enough about the embodied carbon, and just to say a word for having something other than a monolithic building in the middle of the city. You want to have green space, you want to eliminate the heat island effect, and so forth. So, you know, it just goes without saying that creating a viable public commons or plaza on Lot 4 will be a tremendous asset to the community of Santa Cruz in so many different ways, environmentally, from a social equity point of view, from a transportation point of view, from a community point of view. All right, here we are. fully renovate the downtown library. This is what happens, you vote yes. Don't get confused, and please talk to people. I talked to someone today, they said, well, I don't want that 8-story building, so do I vote no? You vote yes to renovate the library, yes to keep the farmer's market where it is, yes to build affordable housing on 8 city-owned parking lots, and yes to avoid a massive concrete parking structure. I think I'm done.
Yeah.
The 9 heritage trees, and this is the thing that's become very clear with the appeal that is now being made to save the heritage trees from being cut down. If we vote yes on Measure O, the tentative permit to cut those trees down, according to the city's own arborist, is void. Void. So voting yes keeps the trees. Now, the website is ourdowntown.ourfuture.org, all one word, ourdowntown.ourfuture.org. And we welcome you to come there, ask for a yard sign, volunteer, donate money. We're in the final phase of the campaign. We need just a little bit more money to make sure that we can keep up the campaign that we've done, I think, pretty well with so far. I mean, so.
Yeah, we're still in questions.
Yeah, we're still in questions.
Yes, okay.
It was one question
Okay.
was, what's the website?
There's a second URL, but it goes to the same website, and it's o-yes.org.
Oh, yes. O-yes.
Oh, yes.
O-yes.
Yes. Okay, so here's a question from the room. Do you think the city, and what department, posted those notices on the trees at the farmer's market to test our response?
That's a very interesting question. The question is, did they post, was this sort of a testing the waters? And we have maybe a comment from Pauline. You want to come up here, Pauline? Who can speak to that. Pauline Seals, who has done an amazing job of going out and getting around 20 organizations and 750 signatures on a petition to oppose cutting down trees.
As far as I can tell, it was mindless bureaucracy. The rules allowed this in order for the developer to check off one more box and allow for a possible appeal. And they looked at how long it would take. They said, okay, post it now. Completely oblivious to the election and the sentiments of the people. And I think they're regretting it now. If you haven't filled out our thing, I've got these forms. And we were yesterday at the farmer's market with a skit where we pretended to cut down the trees, but there were too many tree huggers. Those tree huggers just got in the way.
Thank you so much, Pauline. One of the things that this revised tentative permit made clear was that if Measure O passes, the trees get saved. So Lira has the next question and I hope an answer, and I suspect she does.
Absolutely. Okay, more questions from the floor. Can the renovation of the library include solar panels? Excellent question, because that's being discussed a lot by the city and the opposition about what's so great about what they're proposing for Lot 4. So the renovation study very specifically includes a brand new roof designed specifically to hold an entire array of photovoltaic panels, solar panels. What they did not include, because they were working with about a $27 million budget instead of a $42 million budget, right? They did not include a line or side tap or a PG&E transformer for the electrical to be able to power the entire photovoltaic array. So that's...
Can you speak closer into the mic?
Oh.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Is it better? There was some weird ringing earlier when John was a little close, so I was trying to...
Good, fine.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
All right. So did everyone hear that answer?
So they have the photo, they have this roof, but it doesn't hook up to PG&E there.
They have, okay, so what they did is they designed a roof specifically that would be able to hold a full solar panel array to be able to power the whole, the architects, the Jason architecture firm, which is the exact same firm that has designed. He did both plans, both design proposals for the renovation as well as the mixed-use proposal for the library. And the power upgrades to the library in the renovation proposal would be able to hold about 20% of the annual power consumption in photovoltaics, but they would need to get a new PG&E transformer, which, you know, if we're working with a bigger budget like they are with the mixed use, we would say, yes, please, let's go for that. Okay, there's another question on this one, and then we have one from the back right after that. So this second question is, I heard the parking garage was linked to the big hotel that decided not to include parking in this design. Is this true? Well, the hotel is right at the corner of Laurel and Front is where they're proposing this hotel. Now, the hotel has to, what they call, assemble different parcels to be able to have a big enough footprint to build the hotel. Two of the parcels that they need to build this hotel are publicly owned by us parcels. Measure O actually includes those two parcels in our measure. So if we pass Measure O, those parcels become investments of land, which, you know, the price of land is going up fast and it's going to continue. It's one of our quickest dwindling resources here. So this is an investment of land into affordable housing in that location. So it would stop that hotel of that size at this time, and they could search for a fully privately owned commercial piece of property to seek to build a hotel on. The parking is a ever-changing situation with the Cruise Hotel. Originally they were planning 228 rooms and 15 parking spaces during because we have a really great public transit here that people who stay in hotels use. That's great. So at the community meeting, when it was asked, how do you plan on parking your customers, your guests? And he said, well, you know, we will be providing a valet service to nearby public parking garages. Well, we've made a big deal about it, right? This has been a big thing that we're pointing out, because the more we dig, the more there's lots of layers, and we could give you lots of examples of kind of deals, it looks like deals that are happening out of the public purview. So we made a big deal about this, we put it on our website, we started talking about it, you know, like are we subsidizing parking for this you know, hotel, out-of-state developer? And they recently put out, so they've got like the official plans, right, that had 15 spaces. They recently put out a new draft, and they're proposing right up against the San Lorenzo levy, 3 layers of underground parking garage now. We don't, I mean, maybe they're serious. If they're serious, we're a little concerned for the safety of anyone staying in the hotel. You know, I suspect personally, and I think a lot of us are thinking, this is to make it look like they're planning on this, knowing that the Coastal Commission, which is, it is part of their territory, is going to say, that's not going to work at all. You know, you can't do that against the levy, against the riparian corridor. All right, we have a question in the back. Yes?
Let me just add one comment. If we're downtown 9 feet above sea level, 9 feet, you go down that far, you're asking for trouble. The other thing I'd like to say is that in North Pacific Avenue area, we have, I think, 4 parking garages within 2.5 blocks of the farmer's market. All right, so let me repeat the question very briefly about the funding piece of it. Where is the funding restricted that they have, what little funding, I should add, they have already for the mixed-use project? Is it restricted? Okay, here are a couple of things. The library funding is was originally, the campaign was for the renovation. The 25.5 million goes to the renovation more adequately than it goes for the Lot 4 project. Plus, they applied for a $10 million grant from the state library's Project Advance Fund that, guess what, was mainly to help renovate libraries. But they said, oh no, we're going to use it to build this news library. And guess what, they didn't get the funding. So we have a much better chance of getting that $10 million applying to use that money for the library. The third thing, and I'm going to let Lira talk about the affordable housing part of it, but the third thing I would say is that the farmers market money, the 1.75 million that is available for a permanent farmers market structure from the city goes where the farmers market goes. If the farmers market stays on Lot 4, the money stays on Lot 4, and Lira should talk about the affordable housing money.
So I think that might be what your neighbor was talking about, is my guess.
She's so passionate about. She's very involved in the whole politics of Santa Cruz and everything. And she's been a part of this whole process forever.
So was it the library or the housing you think that she was mostly focused on? The housing part. Okay, so let's talk about the housing funding for a minute. The housing was only added to this whole proposal a little over a year ago. It was in 2021. And they actually applied for these small grants in the last year after they found out this was going to be on the ballot. And they acquired about $7.49 million in money. They're kind of like promissory notes, and if you look into the different grant structures, they could have applied for some of the other affordable housing projects that are in the pipeline, and they chose to apply for this one, knowing it was going to be on the ballot. And there are some people who are very upset about that they jeopardized that $7.49 million by applying for this project.
Stand in front of the camera.
Thank you. It's hard to get used to this. But what's more is, if you read some of the national studies that have been coming out on the expense of building affordable housing units, they average from about $400,000 to $800,000 per unit to build, which is very expensive. When our city allows developers to pay in lieu fees instead of building the inclusionary units, they often only ask for about $400,000 to $500,000. Well, right now, this particular project that they are so intensely, desirous and committed to build, it has mostly studio, tiny little apartments. They do have some 1, 2, and a couple 3-bedroom, but it's still, vast majority is very small studio apartments. And the amount of money that it is coming out to per unit is well over $1 million. It is, we're talking 124 units. One of them is a manager unit, so not affordable. And they acquired $7.49 million. And the city's recent slideshow showed that they still would need to acquire $121 million more. And if you really look into how this stuff works, the cost of land is one of the most expensive parts of building affordable housing. They own almost all of that land there. They actually still don't own the total fitness parcel that they would need to own, and they've been trying to acquire it and have not yet been able to do so. So that's an unknown cost. It could go up from being, well over $1 million per unit. So there is a real problem with this picture. They keep saying that there's going to be these cost-sharing elements by putting all of these elements together, and maybe there is, but which direction is the cost-sharing going to? To me, it sounds like the garage would be getting some benefit from really overpriced housing construction.
I would just add 2 points to that I think are really important. First point is that the city has an affordable housing trust fund that is the major portion of the money that they presently have allocated. That affordable housing trust fund money is not dedicated to any single location. The second thing to say is that the proof of concept design that I showed you for lot 7 presently includes studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom units. But the configuration of housing, affordable housing on these lots is completely open. And not only that, but the level of housing is open, as long as it is defined within the legal limits of affordability, which includes very low income, moderate income people. So there's a flexibility that the city council has with saying, well, we're really short on very low income housing now, that's what we need to do, or we need a mix of units of affordable housing, some moderate and some low income and some very low income. So there's that flexibility in Measure O for how we plan what kind of affordable housing we build going forward.
I have a question, John.
Okay, Bob has a question from the chat.
Yeah, thanks. And others are coming in that I'm addressing. But somebody asks, Joe and Jordan asks, actually says, what about parking? The large structure is going to take some of this parking away. How do we look for parking in the future? Well, in the future, now and in the future. How does this affect it?
There's a wonderful website that we have that has photographs. What's the name of the website, Lisa?
You can park SC.
You can
It's
park
Instagram, actually.
Instagram. You can park SC, which has a wonderful series of photographs that show unoccupied parking spaces all the time in downtown Santa Cruz. One thing, this is California and people do not like parking garages. One of the things you immediately notice is that all the, you'll have, maybe there's only 10 spaces left on the ground level and there's 102 spaces on the upper level. Nobody wants to go up to that upper level to park. So let's build 3 stories of a parking garage so that the top 2 won't be occupied. But seriously, one of the other things to emphasize is that the affordable housing on these 8 city-owned lots that we're proposing would be above the ground level. It would be entirely possible to include parking and to keep parking on the ground level along with commercial space, child care center, cafes, restaurants, or whatever to have an active streetscape. So those are important considerations. But as the parking consultants say, you don't have a parking supply problem, you have a parking management problem. So yeah.
Okay, so let's just for a second look at the parking demand versus the parking spaces available. So if you look at that green line and you look at the red line, what you see is that at any given time, actually at the busiest hours of the day, during the busiest weeks of the year, we have about 1,500 vacant parking spaces throughout downtown. So Santa Cruz is still learning to become a city, right? We are technically a city, but we kind of still want it to feel like a town. We want to be able to drive up and park, at a meter right in front of the place that we're going. And there's going to be a little bit of growing pains around that, but we have 1,500 vacant parking spaces even during the busiest hours of the busiest days in downtown Santa Cruz. And it'd be great. It's actually really good for us to walk around a little bit. So this is going off topic for a second, but when they look at really healthy urban communities, downtown spaces, they actually really want to see activity. You have stagnant spaces where people are not walking down the sidewalk. You have a loss of an active downtown. You have a loss of people wanting to actually be there, to stop and talk to each other, to get food and hang out outside. So actually having people need to park maybe a block away is a really good thing. You want to activate the city, and it will be a little bit of a growing pain. But one more part about the parking is that we chose not to touch the Cedar Street garage location. It's the oldest parking garage in the city. It's a huge, huge footprint, and it's only one level, right? So it's got the ground level and it's got that second story right there. And it's covered in ivy, which does degrade everything, including cement, relatively quickly. There's going to be a time where it's going to need to be replaced. Now, it's going to be really bad for the environment to do that, but at the same time, we actually need to be, tearing something down and putting something up for parking. Maybe in a couple of decades, maybe if we need more parking, that is a spot where it could happen, because it is, it is a huge opportunity site for something like that. Yes?
Yeah, on the age affordable parking lots that you were talking about, where you can put affordable. So I'm encountering people saying, we want affordable housing, it's critical, we need it right now. And they see this as a way to get it right now. What can we say about how soon we could move that plan to these 8 parking lots and make this affordable housing available? Do we have any response to that? And I have a second question too.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so the first thing that we need to bring back up is that even Don Lane admitted this project is not a bird in the hand. So they have this ability to create this illusion that it is ready to go, even though the way that these significant development projects work is that they actually start with an RFP, a request for proposals. A design team is selected. They hold the first community meeting, right? And then it goes through, if it's a really big project, a second community meeting, and then it goes to the planning commission, then it goes to the city council, it gets approved, then it gets permitted, and it's quite a long process.
Don't forget the money.
And it has to get funded, that's right. Well, we are looking at what is an illusion of this being a really long process. What has been 5+ years in the making has been this conversation, a relatively public conversation, but very limited in how many people engage, about what to do with our Measure S funds. Where are we going to put the library? What's it going to look like? What are the different services and programs and attributes that we want to see in it? That has been what has been 5 years in the making. They added this number of 100, it changed, 50, then 100, then 124 units within the last little bit over a year. And last month, they held their first community meeting for the project as a whole, just last month. The project application was submitted just last month as well. So it is actually way far behind what they are trying to project that it is. And what we're basically doing is we're saying as a community, if you vote for Measure O, we're saying we already all approve of Lot 7 as actually the next best good size location for a project. And the city would be compelled to very quickly go through the RFP, selection of a developer, and would be able to hold the first community meeting after not very long at all. And the funding part is really, really massive. I mean, we're talking, okay, so just an example here. Lot 7, we own the entire thing. Lot 4, we don't. So we still have this giant total fitness in the room that no one's talking about when it comes to this situation. We don't know how much it's going to cost the city to purchase that piece of land and to be able to build this on it. And we don't even actually know for sure it's going to happen. The wording in the documents, the city's documents are, they're moving forward with the whole process in good faith that they'll be able to make a deal work with them and buy this piece of property. So it is actually very far from being a bird in the hand. And what's more is, yes, we need housing for families. Yes, we need 124 units of housing. How many thousands of people do we have living in Santa Cruz? Does anybody know?
67,000.
64,000 residents living in Santa Cruz. And we are talking about the difference between what is best for 64,000 people into the future, and that's gonna climb really quickly, right? With all the new development that's coming down the pipeline, we're gonna have a lot more people living here. So we're talking about decisions that affect the health and vitality of our downtown, the heart of our community, our businesses, which affect their ability to employ people that then need the affordable housing. You know, having this central location as the best place for a town plaza to activate downtown is crucial. It benefits 64,000 residents in untold numbers of ways that are hard to track compared to the 124 units that may or may not be built faster than moving to lot 7 where we own the entire piece of property. We don't have to fund a garage. We don't have to build the garage before it's moving ready, right? So you can kind of see the, sorry.
I have
Yeah,
another.
She had a second question.
Okay, let me just add one thing to
We're
that.
after 8.
We have some more time. One thing to add to that is their most optimistic start time for construction is May of 2024. What are they doing during 2023? The whole year is dedicated to finding money. And the problem is that you can't build a project unless you have the money. They are skating on some very thin ice there saying, oh yeah, we can get the money. And one of the reasons it's complicated is because they have proposed a complexly interdependent project of a parking structure that needs its funding, a library that needs its funding, and housing that needs its funding. With the proposal that Measure O will pass, these things will be disentangled and it will allow separate projects to go forward with all deliberate speed without the encumbrances of, oh, we need to get the money for that part of the project too. So, and you had a second question.
Yeah, I think, dear, I'm thinking about that and forgotten what the other one was. It's important though. Oh, yes. On the amount of space that will be taken up by parking spaces in a garage, I think it would be really helpful if we could give that in square feet so that you can compare that with the square feet for the housing itself. Because I've heard different examples like, well, one parking space is equivalent to a studio apartment. I've heard another one just the other day. 2 is equivalent to a 2-bedroom place. And then you guys did something else different tonight. So I really think it'd be really good to have a clear message. Just mix, so we'll have apples compared to apples. Let's just say how much square foot one parking space takes, and then add that all up, or multiply it, or whatever you do it, and compare it with the amount of space they're saying they're going to have for housing.
We actually found a great image that shows you exactly with the square footage and everything. So we will find that and we will make it available.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I think the quick answer is that, let's say a parking space is 10 feet by 20. That's a reasonable size for a parking space. So that's 200 square feet. It depends on how big a unit you want to build, but and then you have to count the circulation space to get into the parking space, the drive-in space.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 500 to 600 square feet per 2 units of parking, and you can certainly build 2 studio apartments in that, depending on how small you want to go. You can fit a 1-bedroom in there pretty easily.
Okay, but let's just have the square footage.
Okay.
The numbers
600 square feet.
themselves.
I'm willing to go with 600
yeah.
square feet.
We found places where it's like very clearly calculated and it shows it, and so we will make that available. And we also have taken the plans, right, that the city has put up, and you have to like actually add up the different floors. They don't make it like really clear. But when you do that, right, from their own documents, you see that there's a very small discrepancy. The housing right now has a little bit more square footage, floor square footage than the parking garage. Previously, the parking garage was dramatically larger because of the planned underground level. And at the last city council meeting where they were getting the presentation from staff, Staff actually admitted, well, we might add in that lower level again later. Right now, we're just planning on the 3 above. So, you know, it keeps changing.
Do we have any from the chat? We need to go back and forth between.
Yeah, nothing from the chat.
Okay.
except
I have one
a
here.
bit about parking.
Okay,
Okay.
one from the chat and then Judy. Okay.
Okay, so this one is no on
In front
O
of the camera.
people.
You
Okay.
haven't done much television, have you?
No, for good reasons, or I don't want to. No on O people have contributed 3 or more times to their No on O campaign, about 134,000, mostly from real estate interests. It's actually mostly from big development. Why do you think that real estate or big development people are pushing for No on O, both local and out of town businesses? That's a great question. I mean, okay, so we're talking about the community in direct democracy voting on how we're going to use our most precious resource, downtown, our most valuable, expensive resource. I mean, think about history. Land is often what wars are over. And now we've got our, mini political war going on right here. Access to and control of resources is power. And we are saying with Measure O that the community wants this most precious resource that is, once you've built something somewhere, it's like, there it is. It's concrete. How long is it going to be there? Possibly over a century, maybe less. It really depends. But we do need to start renovating buildings instead of building new ones if we're going to survive here. So, I mean, ideally, they will be there for more than 100 years. So once you build it, there it is. It's for that use, and it's owned by those interests. And with Measure O, we are saying the community wants these to be for affordable housing, not whatever you guys decide in private meetings to sell them for, like those 2 lots they want to sell to the luxury hotel. And we keep hearing from the other side, they like to cherry pick this little thing and be like, but this is a fact that's too small of a parcel. Oh, it's too small of a parcel. But you can build a 228-room hotel utilizing that parcel. So these are investments of something very important into affordable housing, into the future. And of course, realistically, at first, we would be moving with the biggest parcels, right, in the measure. So lot 7 is by far the biggest parcel in the measure. That is where we can build, roughly the same amount, and depending on the density bonus, even more than what they're planning for lot 4, because it wouldn't have a 3-story parking garage underneath it. So I hope that
There is one question.
Let me just, I want to add one thing to answer that directly. The cost of a parking space, to build a parking space, is about $60,000 minimum these days. These developer interests are donating $10,000, $15,000. That's less than a quarter of one parking space that they're donating in order to have the city subsidize parking for them. The other thing that's very clear to me, and I want to say this very delicately, is that developers like to have a city where they can call the shots on development. And one of the things that is at stake more fundamentally about Measure O than all the wonderful things about having a holistic plan for the city that has open space where a farmer's market can thrive and other public events can be held, and affordable housing and a densifying downtown and a wonderful library in the Civic Center, is that if Measure O wins, it means that we as citizens have demonstrated our capacity to shape the future of our community rather than just have it shaped by developers who are interested in whether it pencils out for them. And they know, they have used the word Measure O loses, developers feel like they would never say this out loud, they would have carte blanche because nothing would stand in their way.
John, a quick question from the chat. What do you say to those that are arguing that we have had a very robust community process? It's now in the fourth incarnation of this project. Ken's proud.
Great question. What about all of the community engagement we've had? I'll give you two instances of community engagement. One was when we voted on Measure S. We voted overwhelmingly on Measure S, and then there came the bait and switch. Second moment of community engagement that was really, really important was when the city council voted to proceed not with approving any project, but with moving ahead with exploring planning, with okaying planning for the Lot 4 proposal. Public comment at that city council meeting ran 80% opposed to the project. That was public input. Okay, I'm going to give you a third moment of community input. That moment is November 8th, 2022.
Yeah.
That's our public input.
Yeah.
Judy had her
Oh,
hand
yes,
up.
right, yeah, I just had one quick question, and that was back to lot 7. How many more units of affordable housing could we build on lot 7 as opposed to the 123 on lot 4?
Kaiser Marston, I'm glad you asked that question, Judy. Kaiser Marston Associates, who did the consultant report for the city about Measure O's impacts, did I would say, a very conservative analysis, and they suggested that 110 units or so could be built, 109 units could be built on Lot 7. Our own proof of concept shows that you can build about 130 even with just 4 floors. If you went up 5 floors, which is the height of affordable housing component of Lot 4, you would be up to 150 units.
So one of the things that Kaiser Marston did in their report is that they compared the city's mixed-use project that would need to get a massive density bonus to be able to go up to that height. You have to get waivers to go up to the height of that proposal, and to do that, you have to first get a density bonus, which the state has made very easy to get when you build affordable housing. But what they did not do is then apply the fact that with a 100% affordable housing project on Lot 7, you would also qualify for a massive density bonus. So they gave their estimate at 109 units, they gave it at like what our actual height limit is, when they could go up more than 3 floors actually, and have up to a 50% increase in density. So, I mean, realistically, it also depends on if you're going with more studios versus 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, or 3 bedroom, and what you decide to do with the ground floor. That's actually really big too. But you could actually very easily get up to 150 units there. I mean, if you went with the SROs that the city allows, those go down to 150 square feet. But that's not what we want. So.
Okay, we have a question on a card, really a good, important question. In 2016, when Measure O was on the ballot, did the county also vote for the renovation of Santa Cruz Library? And how is it that the city/county monies are used to renovate the current library? This is a question, it's a really interesting question that is about, to me it's really interesting. I'm sure it's like incredibly boring. But it's the problem of overlapping jurisdictions. The library system includes the entire county except for Watsonville. And Measure S was voted on in the library district. However, the land on which the downtown library is owned is city land, and so it is with other libraries around in the system, and the city's then allocate and determine the expenditure of money in relation to, I knew this was going to get weedy, in relation to the overall library system. So ironically, the city council, and you hear complaints both ways about this in the Sentinel. People saying, well, I live in the county and I want to vote against Measure O. And other people saying, I live in the county, how come I can't vote for Measure O? The decision is in hands of the city council. It was the body that decided to move ahead with their proposal to move the library. It is the body that would decide to return to renovation, will decide to return to renovation when Measure O passes. Not to be complacent, not to be overconfident, but we're going to do this.
We're gonna take 2 more questions. Laura, and I always forget your
Elise.
Laura, and then Elise, and then we do have a song, another song by Russ, so I hope you guys will stick around for
There
that.
you go.
So Laura,
I just don't understand the whole picture of how we have enough water.
that's a great question.
It doesn't
Well,
doesn't
I can
make
tell you what
sense.
the city's water department says.
We know they say we have enough water, but then they,
Well, what the city's water department says is look at how much water consumption a single-family home consumes. And look at how much water a unit with all these, water-saving faucets and everything, how much water that uses. And then they do a comparison and say, look, we can house all these, extra units. We can totally withstand this. The thing is, we're not saying let's get rid of that huge swath of single-family homes and build that high-rise. That's not what we're saying. So why that's being compared doesn't really make much sense. Because what we're saying is let's take that commercial building over there, or lot 4 that has no water consumption on it right now, and then let's house who knows how many people that need water to survive. So that's a really good question, and it's we got a problem on our hands. It's one of the big resources that we have to carefully track as a municipality. Are we going to be able to withstand growth? And the other one is land, which is what Measure O is all about.
Yeah, I would just add to that, that's a problem we're going to have to solve no matter which way this election turns out.
adding more people is going to make it harder.
Yeah, it's a fundamental contradiction of growth
Yeah,
in an era of climate crisis.
yeah.
And,
It's like
No.
we're avoiding the elephant in the room.
yeah,
The
okay.
toad in our
Fair
situation,
enough.
total fitness.
Last question from Elise.
Real quick, I think it's going to be quick. Measure S. Something I heard tonight cued a memory that I had. I think I remember that the funds for Measure S expire, or are supposed to expire. There's a sunset on them. At least, do you know anything about that, or have you heard that?
We do know. The question is, what about Measure S funds? Is there a use-by date for Measure S funds? And the answer used to be, yes, there's a use-by date and it's 2024. But that use-by date is impossible for any library project to, well, we'd have a better chance at it. Their current completion date for the project is, I think, May 2026. Where the real problem comes in
For
is...
renovation?
No,
Mixed
for,
use.
if they put it in the mixed-use project,
Okay.
their completion date is May 2026.
Uh-huh.
We could move more quickly. The plans are already there for renovation. But the problem with Measure S funds, with the bond funds, is even if there's not a drop-dead date, you start to cut into your payback period on the bonds, and it decreases the amount of bond money that you have to actually put into the project. And just to kind of bring that point home, we citizens already have lost $3 million in buying power of Measure S funds. The city has wasted $3 million by their own accounting because they have delayed renovation of the existing library. And that is their estimate of the cost that they've caused so far. So I just want to finish and say one last thing and go back to this is so fundamentally about us as a community. Yes, it's about all these different elements, but it is about what kind of experience we are going to have living in Santa Cruz. Are we just going to warehouse people in high-rise buildings and have no regard to public life? Or are we going to have a community that has a public life? I think that ultimately, that's the point.